Good morning. How are you? Man, how great is this weather? I am absolutely loving it. Boy, you barely need a coat. It just feels so darn good. The sun is shining. My dog Levi is just loving every minute of it. We can put him outside and he just is like, he feels like he's in Florida. He's just hanging out there catching some rays. So yeah, if you can't, it seems like everybody and their brother's going somewhere for spring break, doing something exciting, but if you can't get away, the sunshine's pretty nice. So we've got a great show planned for you today. A lot going on. Busy morning. It's all about weddings and planning that perfect day or planning that perfect party. We have all sorts of great ideas. So if you're getting married or if you know somebody who is, hang tight. Be a little late to wherever you need to go because we have all sorts of fun wedding ideas. Mad Dog and Meryl are here. They actually cater a lot of weddings. And a lot of people are doing, a little more casual weddings these days. So they've got some great ideas as far as the wedding goes. What else do we have to talk about? Well, first we're going to start out the show with Italian wedding soup. One of my favorite kinds of soup. I remember having it the first time, and I fell in love with it back then, and I've been making it ever since. This was a real, this one's, I do a couple different versions of it. This one we're going to make some all-beef meatballs. Sometimes I'll put pork in there, but I have a lot to do today, so I'm going to take a sip of coffee and get to work. All righty. My kids love this soup, too. A little bit of olive oil into the pan, and I'm going to start sauteing the veggies for the soup. And every soup, just about every soup I make starts out with some onion. Get that onion going, smelling really good. It's Wednesday already. This week is flying by. Wow. Some celery and some carrot. Which is in France when you have real diced up fine onion, celery, and carrot. They call that mirepoix. Fancy French name. In my house, it's just finely diced onion, celery, and carrot. It's a little trivia for you. And always season that up with some salt and pepper. When you're doing soups, it really is so important to season as you go. You can't really throw some salt and pepper in there at the end. It doesn't really work that way. So I'm going to let those veggies sweat down just a little bit, and we're going to start making some meatballs. So the first thing that we're going to do with these meatballs is take a couple pieces of bread, just the ordinary bread that you have, sandwich bread, and I'm going to throw some milk over that bread. And that's going to soften up that bread, and it's going to kind of bind the meatballs together. Just checking on my veggies here. Okay, next thing we're going to do is I've got some garlic. 4 cloves. We're going to throw a little bit of it in the soup. And a little bit of it in the meatloaf. Or meatballs, I should say. Meatloaf is another show. Hey, don't forget our book club meeting is tonight. Reader's Loft. 5:30, and we've got the author Skyping in. So come join us. And speaking about our book club, if you didn't get in on this one, make sure and go out and get our next book club pick. I'm announcing it right now. So here we go. This is a first. It is called, I'm looking at my cheat sheet here, Into the Beautiful North. Into the Beautiful North. You can pick the book up right at the Reader's Loft. We'll also put it on our website, Into the Beautiful North, and we are meeting on April 6th. So mark that on your calendars. Go get the book. Read along with us. And the cool part is this author is actually going to be coming to the Fox Cities to their book festival in April. So after you go read the book and then come to our book club meeting at Reader's Loft in April, you can actually go meet the author in person later in April and get your questions answered. I think that's always so cool to do. Okay, at this point, my veggies are ready. I'm just going to get the rest of that garlic in this pan. It's Italian wedding soup. Got to do a little garlic. I put this recipe, or a similar one for Italian wedding soup, in my cookbook, and I was doing a little research about how Italian wedding soup got its name. I thought, was it something that they served at weddings? And no, it wasn't. What the deal is that it got its name because all the flavors in the soup marry so well together. So they called it Italian wedding soup. Kind of cheesy, but it's true. That's what the research said. That's what they said on Google. Okay, so I'm going to add some chicken stock. About 12 cups, but I'm not measuring. A few boxes of the boxed chicken stock, which has come so far and it's so good. I mean, this is the real stuff. Who has time to make your own chicken stock anymore? If you do, you go. Hats off to you, but I sure don't. So this stuff is, you know, they take real chicken and real bones and they simmer it down for hours and hours and hours, and it's great. And I always go for the chicken stock rather than the chicken broth because, like I say, stock is the real deal. All right. So we'll start with 2 boxes of this. I'm going to get the lid on, get it simmering, get to work on my meatballs, and we'll get back to that broth in just a bit. All right. Goodbye veggies and stock and garlic. We'll get back to you. Time to make the meatballs. All right, we've got a pound of ground beef, and in some recipes that I do Italian wedding soup, I combine ground pork and ground beef. But for this one, we're just going to stick with ground beef, but it's up to you. You can do a combination of ground beef and ground pork. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. I've got about a 1/4 cup of grated, not shredded, grated Parmesan cheese, 1 egg, and some Italian seasoned breadcrumbs. And I want to get back to my bread and my milk that we've got in here. I'm going to give my hands a wash because you know the best way to do meatballs is just to get in there with your hands and do it. It's really, you know, you got to get in there. So I'm going to take the milk and the bread and just kind of falls apart because we started soaking that bread a few minutes ago. Get it all tender. And I'm doing that because sometimes if you do all dried breadcrumbs, the meatballs can be a little bit just not real moist. So I start out always with a little bit of dried breadcrumbs to bind it, and then you can always add more. But don't overdo it on the breadcrumbs. That's where those meatballs, as I say, become a little bit just not as tender as they could be. Now we're going to make little tiny meatballs, and I think that's what makes this Italian wedding soup so fun. Italian wedding soup, by the way, is basically, you know, chicken stock and vegetables and pasta. I think it was, you know, probably everything that was left over went into the soup, but the meatballs are really what make it so much fun. Whenever I see this on the menu at an Italian restaurant, gotta order it, you know, because everybody makes theirs a little bit different. These look perfect. And so now you just start rolling up the meatballs. And we're going for tiny ones. Deb makes the most perfect meatballs ever, so she went to work on these for me. She got busy. And I just like to bake these off in the oven. Do them in a 350 oven, and because they're so tiny, they don't take that long. You know, 15, 20 minutes or so. And then we're going to throw them in the soup, so if they're not completely done, they will cook when they're in that simmering broth. Speaking of books, if you're not doing anything this Saturday, I would love to have coffee with you. I'm going to be at a neat little bookstore in Shawano called Books and Beans. So it's a bookstore / coffee store, and I'll be signing my cookbooks and having some coffee. So come out and see me. I'll be there from like 9:30 to 11, something like that. I always love meeting you and hearing about your recipes and all that kind of stuff. You notice we didn't overcrowd this baking sheet or jelly roll pan that we were doing the meatballs on. That's because we want them to brown up. So, you know, bake them in batches or on a few different pans. If you overcrowd them, they're just going to kind of steam in there, and they're just not going to have that great flavor. Okay, so into the oven these will go. And let me get the ones. This oven is packed this morning. I don't know what all Mad Dog and Meryl have in here, but it smells really good. I see a ham and some other stuff, so stick around because Mad Dog and Meryl will be here a little later in the show. Let me get back to my broth and see how we're doing here and finish this soup off. Perfect. Looking great. So my broth is starting to simmer a little bit. My veggies are getting tender, and now I just really dump the rest of the stuff in here. And you know me, whenever there's a recipe that has the word dump in it, I'm all about it. So I've got some fresh bagged spinach, and I know this looks like a big bag, but it really does just kind of disappear. So we'll just throw in some of the spinach. Sometimes they'll use kale in Italian wedding soup, so it's just kind of up to you what you want to use. And then I've got some pasta. Now, I am using a cine di pepe, which is this little teeny, it's almost like a little ball-shaped pasta, because that's traditionally what you'll see when it comes to the pasta in Italian wedding soup. But if you can't find that, or you just don't feel like running out to buy a box of it, any kind of little pasta works great. So, you know, mini shells, even macaroni noodles would work great. I go ahead and pre-boil those, because when I add pasta to soup, I like to do it at the very end so it doesn't get mushy. You certainly could just kind of cook it in with the soup itself. The problem with that is it really will soak up a lot of that broth, so be careful of that. I want to get my meatballs in, and it's almost time for soup. And these are already cooked through, so we're just warming them. And then I'm going to get my pasta in. So that's why I love this soup, because it's got a little bit of everything. It really is a great dinner. Serve it with some bread. And because we've got all those veggies in there, and like I say, it's kid-friendly. You know, what kid doesn't like meatballs? So, all right, get the pasta in there. And soup is on. Doesn't that look good? And it's so easy. It's a pretty quick cook. Meatballs are the toughest part about it. There's my soup bowl. Where is it? So here you go. If you've got a cold or a flu, and there's a lot of that going around, instead of chicken noodle soup, why not make this? It's got the chicken stock. It's got all this other great stuff in there, the spinach. I know Pete Petoniak's got a cold, and a lot of people do. I have been really lucky this winter. I say that. I need to knock on wood. I need to find some wood, because so far, my family's been pretty healthy. All right, and then I like to finish this off with a little bit of maybe some parsley on top and some fresh grated Parmesan cheese. And man, this is a winner. It's my Italian wedding soup. You can pick up the recipe at any Festival Foods. You can also get it right on our website.